but today we're going to be talking about how it feels to win an Ironman. So welcome, Cortney. Great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
All right, so I'm going to jump right in and ask you a question about the mental. I mean, people know, maybe we should back up a little bit. We're talking about an Ironman, and maybe Cortney, can you explain to me what an Ironman triathlon is to people who have not even done a triathlon, or what is that actually the distances and things that entail?
Certainly. Yeah, so an Ironman is a distance of triathlon that is defined as a 2.4 mile swim, followed subsequently by a 112-mile bike, and then a full marathon to finish it off.
Just a full marathon at the end, right? All right. So let's just start with not necessarily what I think people would think is the hardest part, but what I think is the hardest part is the mental part of that. And so,
Absolutely.
what do you have to have, or what goes through your head when you're trying to swim 2.2 miles, bike over 100 miles, and then run through a marathon? What are the mental components of that that are actually just minimally required to even contemplate that, because it's
Yeah.
beyond my ability.
No, the first thing that I always say that keeps me on top of the mental game is frequently reminding myself of the why. Like, why do you put yourself through this? What is it your ultimate goal is? And if there is a underlying factor that motivates you to do it, rather than getting caught up in just the monotony or pain or whatever it is that you're not enjoying in the moment, reminding yourself of what it is that your ultimate goal is keeps me motivated.
Okay, that begs the question. What is your why? What is
Yeah.
your why for doing triathlons, and specifically doing an Ironman triathlon?
Right. So I would have never foreseen myself getting into triathlon in the first place. This whole journey of mine started back in 2021 when two of my biggest both life and fitness inspirations unfortunately passed away close to one another. Um, the first inspiration of mine is a close friend of both Alan and mine named Kevin Heller, and he grew up a very passionate athlete, super into triathlon, and I was unfortunately diagnosed with ALS and forced to watch that whole passion of his slip away. He passed in 2021, as well as a huge inspiration of mine in Gary Rikis, who founded the Rikis Center, and I attribute a lot of my growth throughout like the high school years to him. Um, and he also passed shortly after Kevin. And the whole slogan of the Rikers Center is "Got goals,"
Yeah,
as you
I
can see
see
by the
that.
shirt.
I see that.
Um, and so, this being during COVID, I didn't have any summer work lined up, and I was thinking, what is the biggest triathlon related goal that I could try to achieve to honor both of them? And so, I signed up for an Ironman, having never swam laps in a pool.
Huh.
For this bike was maybe in the 40-mile range, and furthest run 5 miles, and had a whole lot of work cut out for me.
All right. So, yes, Kevin Heller and the Reiki Center are just two very inspirational parts of my world as well. Actually, before you were born, Cortney, I was actually at the Reiki Center and met a bunch of people over there when I first started practicing in orthopedic surgery and sports medicine in the Bay Area. So, those are two very, very inspirational components of my world as well. When you started thinking about that, so I guess you put out this big hairy goal of doing an Ironman triathlon. Did you have any idea what you got yourself into?
I had a sort of an idea. Um, my dad had done a handful of significantly shorter distance triathlons with Kevin
Right.
back
We were
when I
we
was
were
in.
slacker international distance people. We, which
That's a
by
whole
the way, for
different
the
beast.
audience, it's very difficult anyway. So I know we're talking to an Ironman, but international distance triathlon essentially is about a mile swim. It's about a 25-mile bike, and then you do a 10K or about 6.2 miles. So to Cortney, that's a slacker. To somebody like me and or your dad or other people, that's a heck of a lot of effort. But I get it. I get it.
It's an entirely different beast.
Yes.
But yeah, so I had seen what he and Kevin and you all did with shorter distance triathlon, and I didn't really ever see myself getting into it. But when I had this opportunity to, I had a little bit of a preconceived notion of what a triathlon might be, and it turned out to be a whole world of like a Pandora's box. Once you open it, it has sort of drawn me into all of the three different sports independently.
Gotcha. And I want to learn more about your training, your nutrition, your recovery, but I want to push pause on just one thing because you're obviously not somebody who needs to be motivated to be fit. And some people listening or watching this might say, well, I'm never going to be a triathlete, and I'm definitely not going to be an Ironman triathlete. But do you have any suggestions for people who need motivation to move or need motivation to be fit and maybe intimidated by somebody like you who's, oh my God, I can't be Courtney, so I'm not even gonna get off the couch. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, no, I've found that through just general wellness and well-being that comes through exercise and proper nutrition and recovery and sleep and all of that, that it really helps just to enhance every aspect of my life, especially just in like overall energy levels and anything else that you want to achieve, whether or not it's athletic or fitness related, having mental clarity and energy to pursue those goals and interests of yours is something that is very, very well supported by proper nutrition and approaching your life from the preparation that it takes to keep your body well maintained.
Yeah, it's actually quite under recognized is I think the value of physical fitness for your mental fitness, not just to maybe think clear, but to avoid things like anxiety or depression. I know that when I'm all, wound up and crazy in my head of trying to figure out what I'm going to do, or if I'm getting really anxious or worried about something, if I go for a bike ride, if I go for a run, if I jump in the pool and do a swim, it kind of short circuits that crazy circuit in my head of what's going on and allows me to get a little bit better or fresher perspective on whatever's bothering me. I don't know if that's been your thought or if you've experienced that as well. It's not just all about getting stronger, faster, or fitter. But for me, exercise is definitely helps my mental well-being.
Oh, absolutely. I've noticed that in the immediate aftermath of a race that you've been training for many months to like work towards, that once you lose that sort of carrot at the end of the stick that you're working towards, that a lot of the motivation sort of goes away and you might fall into these traps of anxiety or depression or whatever it might be. And even just going out for a walk
Yeah.
or doing yoga and foam rolling, like any sort of motion of the body, I find definitely helps sort of realign my mentals with the physical aspect.
Motion helps your mental health, that's for sure. And I think I love the got goals thing. That's the other part of this that I think is so fascinating, especially for young people who are trying to figure out what do they want to do with their lives. And when you have something like this big hairy goal of doing an Ironman triathlon, and I want to get to the story of you winning an actual Ironman triathlon, but the idea of having a purpose, having a goal, and working towards that is one way to sort of spark hope and literally run away from despair. Do you have any thoughts about that in the context of what you've accomplished?
Totally. I think one of the biggest lessons that I've learned through triathlon is that you're capable of way more than you think, and that the mind is by far the most limiting factor. Like what I described earlier with having not much of a background in any of the three sports, signing up for the race and just putting it in the calendar, knowing that eventually one day my 5 mile run that used to be the furthest and hardest thing I'd ever done now has to be nothing.
Yeah.
And just that switch that flips in the mind. Once you sign up for something, it's pretty magical. I mean, I would have never foreseen any of this.
I have this concept, I call it, Courtney, betting on yourself. And we're talking to Cortney Weintz about being an Ironman triathlete and actually a winner of an Ironman triathlon and going to Kona, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But when I suggest to myself or my patients or anybody, it's something pretty simple. And the next time you're going to go turn your car on, or you're going to just look in the mirror in the bathroom, if you just push pause for 10 seconds and stare at that person in the mirror, and this is the thing I've been doing for about 2, 3 months, Courtney, is I'm going to bet on you. I'm going to bet on you right now. So I call it like betting on yourself. And when you do that, or when you bet on yourself to do the triathlon, or if you commit publicly to say, I'm going to go run a triathlon, or I'm going to complete this project, the nanosecond you do that, a couple things happen. Your confidence soars because in order for other people to believe in you, you know what has to happen first? You got to believe in yourself. And I think that's what it is. And I love how you did that. And then that doesn't mean it just automatically happens. So this is what I know a lot of people are interested in. You go from maybe not swimming very much, biking a little bit, and running 5 miles. How do you get to this ability to execute at the Ironman level? Can you take us through that journey?
Yeah, I can do my best. The hardest part of triathlon training, especially for long distance where you're just accumulating so many miles of volume, is preventing injury. Because the second that you get injured is the second that your whole training plan is derailed and you get set back. And this is a lesson that I learned in my first round at Ironman, was ramping up training way too quickly and being too ambitious with the goal that I had set. And the second time around, I had definitely taken a much more methodical and calculated approach where I'm making sure not to increase my mileage too much over any given week and trust the process that even with these small increases in mileage each week, that it will eventually add up to the desired amount.
Yeah,
So
I mean, that makes total sense, and I obviously remember a little bit of that beginning part of it. But
yeah,
when you're bouncing into these obstacles, small, medium, or large, physical or mental, how do you smash through them? How do you get around them? Because I think sometimes people look at the end result, being an Ironman, being somebody who finishes first in that is, oh, well, I can't do that, but I know it has come at a significant cost, and you have done a lot of things to overcome obstacles. But how do you push through those obstacles? That's question one. The second is, how do you push through what I call the plateau, where you're working really, really, really hard, but you're not necessarily getting a lot better, and you just don't see maybe the end in sight?
yeah. So with obstacles, I think the biggest thing that I keep in mind is that it might be one step backwards, but it's in the context of a bigger picture of progression throughout your training that might be taking you 2, 3, 4, even more steps forward. And so it's not any one specific workout that is going to catalyze your progression. It's the continual sum of each little thing that you do, whether it's the actual training workout, whether it's the nutrition you're putting in before, during, and after, sleep, stretching, foam rolling, all of the small details add up. And so if any one part doesn't feel like it's progressing, focusing on the other stuff definitely gets me through those moments.
Gotcha. Now it's not just about, training. It's like nutrition and recovery and sleep and things like that. Can you comment a little bit about what it takes to do that as well?
Yeah, the amount of sort of peripheral work that goes into training for something like this is almost more than what you see in your training logs. So like during my peak week of training for this past Ironman, I had accumulated almost 22 hours of total moving time. And I think that the amount of total time spent eating more, foam rolling, stretching, preparing the gear, and making sure that you're getting enough sleep to like fully accept the training benefit that you've earned through the workout amounts to significantly more time than just what you see in the books.
Gotcha. So let's fast forward to when you did your last Ironman, and sort of I know the story, but maybe let's just slow down and take us like a month before the Ironman and how you selected to do that one in Sacramento, and then take us through all the way to the finish line, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I can do my best. Feel free to ask any questions that may arise. But for me personally, this specific race, the 2023 Ironman California in Sacramento, a lot of stars kind of had to align for the ultimate goal of potentially one day qualifying for the Ironman World Championships in Kona to actually come to fruition. Um, First of all, I had just graduated from Stanford, and I again didn't have any job lined up for immediately after. And so, having done previously an Ironman that didn't quite go to plan with the overtraining and injuries that all accumulated throughout the journey, this one was set up at a perfect time to gradually work up to the correct distances and make sure that these injuries didn't come back. And so I started specifically training for it in June, but the base that I had built over the previous school year doing shorter distance races with the Stanford team had definitely set me up with a good foundation. Um, Training progressed fairly smoothly throughout the months between June and October, and I was fortunate enough not to see any of the injuries come back that had previously like hindered my progression. But I made sure that with the course specifically that I was training for to do similar workouts that emulated the actual course. So, for example, the bike course in Sacramento is very flat. And so in our neighborhood around here, the terrain is generally more mountainous. And so I would specifically ride routes that were flatter, or at least as flat as I could find them, just to like prepare as you want to perform.
Yeah, that's a good point right there. We should push pause for 1 second, because prepare as you want to perform is a really valuable component of anything you want to do. So you were scouted out this triathlon course, and you understood that it was going to be flat, and you prepared that way. Because if you prepare and you either over prepare or under prepare, or inappropriately prepare, you're not going to have as much confidence when you actually execute on any task. So
Absolutely.
that's an interesting thing. Prepare as you want to perform.
Yeah, but it's not only prepare as you want to perform, it's also preparing for the worst case scenario where you get out there and you have 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts
There you
and
go.
just inclement weather. And so would time my training to go out and ride during the windiest parts of the day in the morning and around the evening. And so that way, when you show up to the course, you're as well prepared as you can be for anything that it might throw at you.
Awesome. So you get prepared, and then take us like maybe a week or so beforehand. You dial it down a lot before an
Oh, yeah.
Ironman, or do you do just a little, or what do you do the week or 10 days before?
So the weekend before, I was actually in Boulder, Colorado for family weekend visiting my brother with the rest of my family.
Nice.
And that specific week, your mileage is so far reduced
Yeah.
that it almost feels like you're not working hard enough. It's like
Right.
I've trained all of these months, put in all of these hours, and now all of a sudden we're just kind of doing nothing for a week.
Yeah.
But it's really giving your body that time that it needs to repair the all the damage that you've accumulated throughout training and build up its stores of energy so that come race day you are firing on all cylinders and ready to go.
All right. Yeah. It probably didn't hurt to be in at elevation in Boulder too for a few days before, or maybe longer before the trip, right?
Yeah, no, I think the most benefit you could possibly get from altitude comes over a longer period, but I don't imagine that it hurt in any way.
Okay, so race day. Let's just go through the specifics of race day. What time do you get there to get set up, and then as much as you remember of
Yeah,
swim, bike, and run, take us through that because people are going to be very fascinated to hear sort of the first person perspective on doing an Ironman.
right. So come race morning, uh, you're supposed to arrive in the transition zone to set up all of your stuff before the race starts. And so that constitutes like a 4:35-ish a.m. wake up, uh, drive over to the course, get dropped off, set up all of your stuff, and then for this one specifically, they had a bus take you from transition to the swim start,
Okay,
which because the course was the swim course was in a river, it had to start upstream, and that way you end up at the correct location for transition.
okay,
Uh,
as opposed to the other
so
way around.
yeah, no, so we hopped on the bus, and then race starts at 7 a.m. and you're given, I believe it's 17 hours to finish, um, until they pull the plug and shut down the course.
Okay,
But race starts at 7 a.m. and I had a pretty specific race plan going into it, knowing where my strengths and weaknesses lied. Um, on the swim, since it's downriver, it's going to help me a lot being a non-swimmer.
yeah,
And so I approached the swim as sort of like a 45-minute all-out effort, just get it over with as fast as I could, knowing that I would then have all of the bike to hopefully build a lead if I could. Um, and I got out of the water, and my parents who were there supporting me were shouting out times and placements, sort of giving me information as to where I stood in the race, because there's no way for you to tell when
right,
you're out on the course where everyone is.
right.
So they said I was in, I believe, 14th place, around 14 minutes behind. And so I knew I had my work cut out for me on the bike. And if I had any shot at winning, I would have to get into first place and build a lead during the bike. And so I hop on the bike, and I'm really not feeling great by any mean. Like, my energy levels are kind of low. I'm not hitting the race pace that I was training for the many previous months. And for some reason, nothing was just like really clicking until around 20 miles in. I had a crash with the two people in front of me.
Wow.
Yeah, it it was a situation where the two people ahead of me were riding side by side a little too close together, and they knocked handlebars. One of them fell down, and I was in the process of passing them, so I had nothing that I could do besides just run straight into the guy on his bike on the ground.
Oh,
So flipped over my handlebars, got back up, fortunately uninjured, bike still functioning, made sure the other guy was okay, and hopped back up on the bike within no more than a minute of lost time. And so after that, I had a huge boost in adrenaline.
I was going to say probably right.
And the race numbers were getting blown out of the water, and I was really moving pretty fast. And fortunately, I was able to sustain this high level of output for the entire first lap of the bike course and return to the place where I could get an update on my placement. And I hear my dad yell out, "You're in first place and you have a 4-minute lead."
Wow, that's pretty
And so
impressive.
I was kind of shocked. I was like,
How
this
many
might
laps? How many laps was it?
do two. So
Just
at that point, I'm 56 miles in.
okay.
And yeah, I was kind of in shock. I was not at all expecting to have erased the entire deficit that I had accumulated throughout the swim and build a lead on top of that in just the first half. And so that again was a huge morale boost and sort of propelled the second half on a good start. And around, I'd say probably 75, 80 miles in, I'm going to pass another group that's sort of like in the process of their first lap. And as I ride by them, I get someone shouting out like, "Hey, is that a Give 'em Heller logo on your suit?" Which
which is for Kevin Heller and
exactly
our
for
friend.
context, when Kevin was diagnosed with ALS, he made a huge point of fundraising and creating a huge movement behind the disease. And the title that he gave for it was Give 'em Heller, sort
Yeah.
of encapsulating his last name. And
Hashtag Kevin Heller
oh yeah.
yeah.
And so I made sure to represent both him and Gary in the tri suit that I was wearing with the got goals across the chest on that as well,
Yep.
and give him Heller logos throughout. But that guy called out to me, and it really sort of put front and center why I'm doing this race.
Back to the why.
Exactly. And that sort of allowed me to finish the bike on a strong note and come back into transition, ready to start a marathon 12 minutes up on second place.
Nice. Okay, so just as a as a review for people who don't know this, you've swam about 2.2 miles in a river, you've just completed 112 miles on a bike, and then you have to just jump on the road and run 26.2 miles. Okay, so take us through the marathon and then all the way to the finish line.
Exactly. So starting the marathon, I was really energized, like sort of feeling on top of the world, having a double-digit lead, and knowing that there is a possibility of winning my age group. And so I started out a little bit too hot. I flew through transition, like really leaning on my short course history, where transition means a lot more in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah,
Um, and started out the run way too fast, eventually slowed down, and was getting updates periodically from my parents. Consistently, they were saying that I had more than 10 minutes lead on second place, and I was cruising at a pace that I knew I could sustain almost indefinitely if I needed to. And so I was smooth sailing for the first 16 miles.
wow. Just smooth
And
sailing for 16 miles. No big deal, everybody.
yeah, no, there was rain in there, which I guess helped cool me off, but was definitely unexpected given that it's Sacramento and can generally be pretty hot.
Yep.
It was kind of a welcome
Right.
adverse weather action,
Yep.
um, all things considered. But once I hit that 16-mile mark, I heard my dad yell out, "It's like you have an 11-minute lead, 6:44 is the pace."
Yikes.
And so what that means to me is my 11-minute lead is getting eaten away by somebody running 6-minute 44 miles. And in that moment, I do a little bit of mental math and extrapolate out my pace. I was hanging right around 8 minutes. This guy was running more than a minute per mile faster, and I have 10 miles left to go. And so you do that math and you find out that he passes you in that last mile. And it was at that moment that like the race really started.
Yeah.
Like everything before that kind of seemed insignificant, and it was just those 10 miles left. But I knew that for the first six of those 10, that I wouldn't get another update. So I would have to start just digging a pain cave, seeing how fast I could possibly push myself and sustain for those 10 miles, and then just reevaluate with four to go.
Digging a pain cave, everybody, is basically, maybe I'll let you describe it. I understand it this much, but tell people what digging a pain cave means.
Yeah, it's sort of when you get in that zone where you're just depleting all of your energy and really just hanging on at the limit and trying to push it that one step further where you're just I mean the best word I can describe is digging a pain cave. It's almost exactly as it sounds.
Yeah, I think we can get that idea. So you now have about 4 miles left. You're deep in the pain cave.
Yeah.
Take us through to the finish line here.
Yeah, so at that point I got another update from my parents and they said that I had a 4 minute lead only at that point. And so that means he's right on pace to catch me at the finish line like I had anticipated 6 miles prior. And so with that information, I knew that I had to hang on to this pace that I had set and just hope that it's enough. Um, I'd been staying on top of all of my nutrition throughout the race, making sure that I'm getting enough electrolytes and carbohydrates to fuel the effort. And those final 4 miles is where it can either all fall apart or be just enough to hang on. And so as those 4 miles progressed, I sort of slowly fell into a different state of consciousness
Wow.
where this is something that I had never experienced before. Um, a lot of my like peripheral awareness kind of just shrunk, and I was just focused on the sole task of putting one foot in front of the other and hanging on to a pace that I was hoping to sustain.
And then as you get to that last 150 meters or whatever, do you remember that much? And then take us through that if you can.
Yeah. So around 100 meters to go, you turn from sort of bleak streets of downtown Sacramento with not many fans, kind of just you and the road. And all of a sudden, you turn into this corridor that has a red carpet down the road. It's lined with people, flashing lights, bright uh, music, and you got an announcer like yelling out people's names and all that. And rounding that corner, your body sees the finish line,
Right.
and subconsciously it identifies it's like that is the point where I can shut down and
Right.
this will all be over. And so even in even if you are able to stay on top of the mental game and just like keep pushing yourself, once your body identifies the point where it can shut down, it does. And throughout those 100 meters, I could feel my body just slowly shutting down. It started with like my head and neck, where my head and neck were sort of like bobbing side to side. And then I lost a little bit of control of my arms. They were sort of flailing around a bit. And with about 20 meters to go, I felt my glutes and lower back just slowly but irreversibly start to relax.
Oh, wow.
And so there was nothing I could do but accept the fact that I was slowly but surely hinging further forward. And about 15 feet from the finish line, collapsed on the floor. And the first thing that went through my head is that this will absolutely not be the reason that I lose this race. And so rolled over to my front and just started crawling for the remainder.
And then finished first.
But I didn't know that.
You didn't know that. You didn't know that
I
at the
didn't,
time.
I
Only
didn't
so
learn that until
later,
like 15
were you
minutes later.
even functional after you crossed the finish line at all, or not? I mean, was your brain
Um,
just a complete fog?
no, it was the best analogous description that I could give to that mental state is just being overly intoxicated and not having nausea, which was
Oh,
weird.
interesting.
It was like the world is almost spinning and it takes all of your effort to focus on a single point, and you have virtually no control over your thoughts and feelings, but you're just kind of existing, hanging on by a thread.
Yeah. Well, I want to congratulate you on that. That's led you to getting an opportunity to go to Kona. And that's October of this year. Is that right? Or is it
Yes,
November?
that's October 26th of this year.
And so there's a lot of things you could do with your life, Courtney. And now you've got this great opportunity in front of you. Is that triathlon in Kona still the sole focus, that got goal thing for you?
Well, it started out as if I were fortunate enough to unlock this opportunity to worry about the world championships, that it would kind of just be a victory lap and I would treat it as just like an enjoyable race.
Right.
Uh, but the more I think about it, the more I realize that this is very likely a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I might as well go all in and just see where this could take me. And so as we get closer, I'm becoming more of the mindset that I want to treat it as a competitive race and see what could come of it.
Yeah, this has been a phenomenal story, Courtney, that I know is going to inspire other people to find their why, to do something incredible like doing an Ironman triathlon and then winning one, but doing it for the right reasons, doing it for the Reiki Center, doing it for the memory of Kevin Heller, and hopefully for the people who are listening or who are watching this or reading about this, inspiring them to do their own version of an Ironman triathlon. I mean, you have neither one of us probably has any idea what will come from this getting out into the world, but I know that people will look at you, Courtney, and say, well done, and may want to reach out to you and figure out how and where it all came from, because it's a pretty special achievement just to win, the California Tri, and then to get the opportunity, and then to turn around and think about what the next best steps are for you. So thank you for sharing your story. Are there any last things you'd like to share with the people who are listening on Vitality Explorers about your journey?
There actually is specifically one thing I want to say is
Okay.
that one of the most critical parts of working towards a big goal, such as an Ironman, is making sure that you're surrounding yourself with people that want to see your success as much as their own. And so having the communities that have been built by both Gary and Kevin in the Rika Center and the whole Give 'em Heller movement, um, being able to lean on them, it's been very eye-opening to just to know that if you ask for help, people will be there. And even through like my own community at Stanford Triathlon, it's been very motivating to have a group of people that have common interests and can share their own experiences with whatever it is that you're looking to get over the next hurdle. And if there is anyone that is out there that wants to reach out to me with any sort of triathlon related questions, I'd be more than welcome to.
And where can they find you, Courtney? I know you have an Instagram. Are there other things you'd like to share?
Yeah, you can find me at my first and last name, Cortney Weintz, on Instagram. I've got a pretty uniquely searchable name, fortunately, so I'm sure you'd find a way.
All right, I'll put that in the show notes for it, and I'll put it up on when we put this out there. But Courtney, this has been phenomenal. I'm gonna put this up as the very first what I call profiles in vitality. So it's going to be, winning. I might steal one of your Instagram pictures where you're in the wheelchair with the ice pads on your knee as sort of the thing. But thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to hearing what people have to say about this. So thanks very much, Courtney.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here.